we need to unravel that fear. And that starts with 4 things. Okay, I call it the 4 C's. First of all, it starts out with courage. You have to have the courage to admit that you need help, that you're scared, okay? Because we're all so embarrassed to talk about the vulnerability we have. And vulnerability is really important to share. So we need to have that courage to take that step. We also need to have the courage to say, I'm no longer happy. I want something else.
Today's guest is Alison Jacobson, a coach for women in midlife who are ready to recapture their dreams and get past self-doubt to live confidently kick-ass lives. She's the host of podcast Midlife Mavericks and author of Daily Inspirations for Midlife Women, a guide to peace, joy, confidence, and abundance. Welcome, Alison.
Thanks, Anita, for having me.
Really excited for this. So what is one of the most courageous things that you have done?
Well, there's 2 things. One is overcoming the death of my son to SIDS in 1997. And I think the most courageous act was deciding to live, because it was the most devastating experience I had ever had. And so that was one of the biggest things. And then the next was last year, when it was 25 years that my son had passed, and I decided to run the New York City Marathon. And I had never run a mile in my life. And I trained for a year, and I completed 26 miles at the New York City Marathon.
Wow, that's absolutely courageous for sure. And I'm really sorry about your son.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I truly believe that would I want Connor to be here with me? Absolutely. But I do believe that I am who I am today because of that little angel who's been in my life.
Absolutely, yes. Life takes its turns and it makes us who we are for sure. Definitely.
It's true.
So what took you on your journey of coaching women in midlife? Did this naturally fall into place from your experiences, or did you find there was a need for this?
Well, probably both. And as my life, I've always lived my life going down the path. I look at it almost like riding a river, right? And you can either go against it or you can go with the flow. And opportunities have always presented themselves through grief, through obstacles. So in addition to my son dying of SIDS, my second son has intellectual disabilities. I went through a divorce that left me completely bankrupt and had to rebuild myself. And then I met and married my second husband, who unfortunately 4 weeks after we were married was diagnosed with primary progressive MS. So within weeks, I went from being a new bride to being a caregiver. And through all of those trials and just challenges in my life, I realized that you can not only survive, but thrive. And so I first started out coaching women to get through these obstacles, all women. But then as I entered midlife myself, I realized that women in midlife in particular have put so many of their dreams aside because they do have the role of mom, of caregiver, of everything. And one day they wake up and say, oh my gosh, what's left for me? Who am I? And so I really want to help women get past those self-doubts, to reclaim those dreams they had of who they were, and recognize now is the time for them to live them, to achieve all those goals that they want, and put aside that self-doubt and all of those messages we get as women in midlife that we're too old or we can't, because we can do anything we set our minds to.
Absolutely. And I must admit, I know from some of my friends, colleagues, they're absolutely in that place where they've got empty nests. The children have gone off to university. They want a different change in career. So I think it's very important midlife change, whether you want it or not. It naturally comes if you've had children. What are you going to do next? What so far has been your greatest fear in life, and how did you overcome that?
I think my greatest fear is something that I am still dealing with, because I have my mother who lives with me, and she's very active and she's still in good health, but she's 86. But now that my two daughters are going off to university, I have my mom, I have my husband who is physically disabled, and I have my son who's intellectually disabled. And all of a sudden I look and say, oh my gosh, as I get older, what's going to happen? How can I take care of them? And quite frankly, who's going to take care of me if something happens? And so that is something that I always have to address and look at. And, you can't live in a place of fear. And one of the things I always tell my clients is fear is actually non-existent. Unless you are literally in, a fight for your life right at this moment. If a bear is chasing you, because I live in the woods here, if you are, feeling like you're being personally attacked, that's fear. But the vast majority of the fear we have is the fear of the unknown in the future. And that really doesn't exist right now. Right in this moment, are you okay? And the majority of the time, you are. And you have to come from that place of present moment mindfulness so that that fear doesn't envelop you. Because once it sinks into you, I mean, how many times have you woken up in the middle of the night worried about something? It's a thought. It's not a fact.
That's beautifully put. Thank you. Absolutely. Yes. And there is a lot of concern there, absolutely, for everyone. So take note of what's just been said. There is help as well out there. Do get it. Many of your coaching clients are contemplating divorce or are in the process. Why is the thought of being single so scary for women?
Well, unfortunately, the reality is, at least here in the United States, and I would assume otherwhere as well, women are still making less money than men. And for many women, even in this day and age, they've put aside their career to raise their kids. So maybe there is this gap in their resume, and now they're going to have to go back to work, and they're scared to death. They're not going to be able to find a job that, they don't have the skills any longer that will allow them to find the right kind of job. So literally, I mean, many women are afraid they're going to end up homeless, and not living the life they want. The other part is, unfortunately, as women, as we age, and this is what society is telling us, is that, we are no longer attractive. So women are looking in the mirror saying, I'm never going to meet a man. I'm going to die alone. I'm not going to have money. I'm not going to have a job. And so all of this starts playing on ourselves. And it's a very difficult situation to be in. And again, what I go back to in telling women is we need to unravel that fear. And that starts with four things. Okay. And I call it the 4 C's. First of all, it starts out with courage. You have to have the courage to admit that you need help, that you're scared. Okay. Because we're all so embarrassed to talk about the vulnerability we have. And vulnerability is really important to share. So we need to have that courage to take that step. We also need to have the courage to say, I'm no longer happy. I want something else. Once you do that, then you need the clarity. And I think it's very interesting because many people, if you ask them what they don't want or what makes them miserable, they can really answer. But when you ask them, what would make you happy? How would you be happy? They can't answer. And you have to have that clarity of what you want in your life. What does that look like? Who are you with? What are you doing? You can't achieve a goal if you don't have a specific goal. So the next part is having that clarity. The next part is the confidence. And as women, we always have those limiting beliefs. When you look at a man, if he's, applying for a job, he will say, even if there's only 3 criteria that he matched, I can do it. Whereas a woman has to check off every box. And so we have to have that confidence of saying, I know I can do this. And I do a lot of work with my coaching clients of getting past those limiting beliefs and talking about where they came from and getting past that self-doubt. So we have to have that confidence to put ourselves out there. And that comes with having the goal. And that's your true north. If you know what you want, you can have the confidence and take those small steps. And then it comes down to consistency, because as soon as there's a setback, maybe a woman who's going through a divorce went on one date and it was miserable. She's like, that's it. I'm never going to find somebody. Or maybe she applied for a job and got turned down. So immediately she's going to revert back and say, I can't do it. I have to stay in this. And so it's that consistency. every day of working a little bit more and getting up that hill.
Mm. Ah, that's so fantastic. I love the four C's. And yes, you're right in saying that. We have a knockback and it affects us.
Yeah.
Having the courage to get up and keep going, it can be hard at times. I have a lot of people coming on the show, and generally speaking, because the whole brand is Create the Courage to be Fearless, talking about courage, it can be, yeah, a challenge. But,
It really
keep
can.
going. Yeah. But I like that. And it's having the confidence, like you say. And sometimes things won't work out, but that's okay too.
Exactly. And I think I always give the analogy when you have your goal in place, it's kind of like your GPS system. And your
Yes.
GPS system is sending you a certain way, but along the way, you may get a flat tire or you may run into
Mm,
traffic or something may happen. You're not going to turn around in those bumps in the road. You're going to keep moving forward despite those turns. And the other thing I always say is those turns may lead you to a fabulous place. How
yeah.
many times, so I'm very big on law of attraction and manifesting. But in
Hmm.
order to manifest, you have to leave your mind open to other opportunities because they're going to come in the door and you have to see them and be willing to embrace them despite fear.
Yes, definitely. And yes, we'll go on to your book in a moment and tell us more about that and your podcast. But what would you say to a woman who is unhappy in a marriage but is unsure about leaving the marriage?
Well, what I first say is knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
And the first step is to educate yourself. Educate yourself. First of all, so many women, unfortunately, have allowed the husbands in the marriage to manage the money. And they don't
Mm,
even have a clue of what's in their bank account, how much debt there is, what are their investments. So get confident about understanding all of your debts, all of your assets. Start looking around and really put together a budget for yourself of what would it take me to leave this marriage and be single. And I can tell you, it's usually a pleasant surprise to a woman when she realizes I can do this on my own. And that's one of the greatest problems. When you talk to women who have younger kids, dealing with divorce with younger kids is difficult. There's a lot of logistics. But to stay in a marriage because of the kids is not healthy because
yeah.
they can sense that stress. And it's also not giving them a good example of what a healthy relationship should look like. So if you're
Mm,
staying in a marriage because of your kids, you're not doing them a service. So get educated about your money, understand that you're not helping your kids if you're staying in a marriage, and then start imagining what your life would look like. I mean, it's one thing to work on a
mm,
marriage, but when you've worked on a marriage and it's not helping anymore, it's not working. Not only is it a loving thing for yourself, but it's a loving thing for your spouse because they deserve to find someone who will make them happy as well. Look around, get all the information you can, and start taking those small steps and find that goal. What is your perfect day? I tell people to journal about that, really
yeah.
down to the details. Where are you living? What are the smells? What are you eating? Make it as realistic as possible in your head because then you get excited. And this is not about an end, this is about your next adventure.
And that's so true. It's about having that adventure. And yeah, I can totally understand why people do get scared.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like you say, finances as well. Absolutely, security comes into it, and that's
Hmm.
a biggie for a lot of people. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell me more about your book, A Daily Inspiration for Midlife Women, a guide to peace, joy, confidence, and abundance.
So when I was at my darkest times, when I had to declare bankruptcy after my divorce, when my husband was diagnosed with primary progressive MS, what got me through was meditation and affirmations. And
Hmm.
this isn't just about positive thinking. This is about truly feeling it and really embodying it. And so I would post a lot of these comments that I thought about in my head, and I would
Hmm.
receive so many nice replies from women who said, "Thank you so much. That one comment is helping me get through my day." And so
Mm-hmm.
I decided, I would say in the book about 80% of the quotes are my own original ones, and 20% are from other incredible women, from Oprah Winfrey to everybody you can imagine. And it's one a day. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not just for women in midlife. It really is for any woman who just wants to start out her day, because I think so many of us don't have the support in real life, and they just need that one piece of motivation to get out of bed and just try one more time and just live one more day. And so that's why I created this book. And I'm so proud of it. And I'm so excited about the comments I'm getting from people who they say it just really gives them that motivation for the day. And it's available on Kindle and paperback on Amazon. So I would encourage anybody to go pick it up. It's an easy read, but it's something that you can keep referring back to.
That's brilliant. And I will put the link in the show notes. So please do go ahead and get that if that's something for you. Thank you. And yeah, it
You're
sounds like
welcome.
brilliant, because then, of course, you can do what you'd like to do. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So tell me more about your podcast. You're the host of Midlife
Yes.
Mavericks. So what's that
Yes.
all about? Loving the
So
title.
I love it. So it is some where I have guests on, some
Mhm.
podcasts are just me kind of talking about everything, but it's really for women, especially who have done something amazing in midlife. Maybe they've changed careers. I actually interviewed this one woman, Siobhan Daniels from the UK. She, at 50, sold her home, got an RV, and she travels around the country in an RV. So
Wow.
it's wonderful stories like that that I love. I had a guest on yesterday, and that podcast will go up next week,
Mhm.
talking about the importance of physical fitness and weight training, but specifically the right type of weight training for women in midlife to help with their estrogen levels and just
Mm.
all of those things. And so I really love talking to people like that who have just incredible inspirational stories, because everybody needs to see they can do anything in midlife. And I just want to create a entire army of strong, capable midlife women.
And why wouldn't we?
That's right. That's
Why
right.
wouldn't we all want to be like that?
Exactly.
Absolutely. So, what resources do you recommend, tools, daily tips to anyone that wants to start dating in midlife, as it can be a real scary thing?
It can definitely be a scary thing. And I actually had a woman on my podcast a few times ago talking about dating in midlife. And the first thing that I would say is you got to put yourself out there. I know a
Mhm.
lot of women feel like, oh, I'm never going to go on a dating site or anything like that. And that's okay. But what you can do is get involved in a volunteer group or some sort of activity that you enjoy doing, where you can meet somebody who enjoys doing the same thing. So you have to put yourself out there, but it doesn't have to necessarily be on a dating site. It could be in just nice places where you naturally go. Maybe, you love playing golf, or maybe you're into art, whatever it is. Get yourself out there, but also understand you're not going to meet the love of your life immediately. As they say, you do have to kiss a few frogs. So be okay with that and be open to different types of people. I think one of the challenges I see in my coaching practice is women will say, oh, this one's not right. This one's not right. And when you look at the pattern, they tend
Mm.
to date the same type of person. And I say, well, look at what you're doing. Maybe there's a pattern there. So open yourself up. Be willing to date people that you never would have imagined dating, because it might be a lovely surprise.
Yeah, it's like the familiar, isn't it? We always go to the familiar because it's default.
Yeah.
I suppose it's safe as well, to be honest. It's like putting it, like you say, putting yourself out there to try different things. I mean, yeah, it's not quite like food, but the thing is,
Right.
sometimes we don't like new food. You've got to try it to see.
Exactly.
You've got to try
Exactly.
it a few times, more than once.
Exactly. And I think you have to go into dating with an idea of excitement and
Mhm.
surprise, because you never know who you're going to meet. So you have to stay open to that. But, I know this sounds cliche, but you first have to start out with loving yourself. Don't jump into a
Mhm.
relationship too quickly if you've just gotten out of a marriage, because you're probably not feeling good about yourself. And if you're not feeling good about yourself, you're not going to present the real confident you. And the energy shows. So get to the place first where you are loving yourself. and you feel confident about yourself, because that's going to translate into presenting who you really are.
Yeah, I absolutely cannot agree with you more. I mean, this day and age, it is all about self-care. You got to love yourself.
Yes,
The thing is, if you don't love yourself, in reality, how can you love someone else?
exactly.
You've really got
Absolutely.
to look after yourself here first and be comfortable with who you are before you can share your life with someone else. And there are women out there, and there's probably men as well, are looking for something that will complete them. You've got to
Yes.
be complete for yourself.
Yes, exactly. I always say you don't want to you want a man, not need a man. You are capable of
Absolutely.
taking care of yourself and standing on your own 2 feet. Don't get into the trap of thinking somebody's going to save you or care for you. You are ultimately on your own. You could find, I mean, look, this is what happened to me. I found the love of my life, but 4 weeks later, he had primary progressive MS. So now I'm a caregiver. I love him just as much, but I am his caregiver, and that's okay. Understand it's not always what you expect or imagine.
Absolutely, yes. So where can the listeners find you online, your book, podcast? What's your website, Alison?
So you can find everything on my website, which is Alison, ALISON dash Jacobson, JACOBSON.com. I am also on Instagram at Alison Jacobson. You can find my podcast on Spotify at Midlife Mavericks, and you can join my Facebook group, Midlife Mavericks, Fabulous Fierce Females. I'd love to have everybody in there.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. And thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
My pleasure. Thank you for sharing your courageous, insightful wisdom and knowledge with us today. And by doing so, I know you have helped so many others. Alison Jacobson. So we are all about Create the Courage to Be Fearless podcast here. What is your definition of courage?
My definition of courage is being a kick-ass woman who is free to express adventure.